Alarambal Jate Vartor Narvode, as we say in Mandoa. In English, it means welcome and good morning, my brothers and sisters. I am Udesla Jarir. I am the co-founder of the Way of the Mandalore religious movement. We are a registered domestic nonprofit in the state of Ohio and a legal federal 501c3 private charity. As usual, let's begin by making it clear that this video is for religious educational purposes only. No one involved in the social media pages or multimedia messages are lawyers, and nothing in this or any other message or social media post is to be taken as legal advice. End of disclaimer. Moving on. Welcome once again to the Way of the Mandalore religious movement. In our last sermon message, we began discussing a Mandalorian's conduct with others, with the third tenet and a Mandalorian's requirement to never be the one to initiate violence. Today, in this video, we will be covering a related topic, Tenet 4, defend those who cannot defend themselves. A Mandalorian must be prepared and willing to defend themselves, those who cannot defend themselves, and the way. And they must be willing and ready to lose every drop of their blood in the process. What does this mean? A Mandalorian must be willing, able, and prepared to be a protector to those who cannot defend themselves, and to defend the way. Now we'll start with the second part regarding defending the way first, since that seems to be a source of a bit of confusion. When we say that a Mandalorian must be willing to defend the way, it doesn't mean using physical means. We do not advocate for any kind of religious violence or quote-unquote holy war against those who do not share our faith. Or against those who, for whatever reason, whether through misunderstanding or outright lies, are actually vehemently opposed to our religion's very existence. We do not condone that. Now, this is loosely and partially related to Tenet 11, and we'll cover that in a future video. But when we say defend the way, we mean to not allow lies and misunderstandings to be spread without rebuttal. Whether someone is just misinformed and ignorant, or doesn't understand our faith, or they are outright lying in an attempt to hurt either individual keepers or even the movement as a whole, we are to refute such things whenever we find them. Whether in person or online, we must be prepared to defend the way with our words against those who would spread lies and false information, intentionally or otherwise. Defense need not be physical. But perhaps a more important aspect of this part of the tenet is that sometimes the best defense against those who stand against the way is to live our lives in such a way that our actions prove their information false. As I said, more on this when we get to the 11th tenet. Now moving on to the more generally understood part of this tenet regarding actual physical defense of others. Now let's make this clear from the beginning so there's no confusion. This does not mean a Mandalorian is to resort to violence except as a last resort. The way does not condone vigilantism. And some of the talk regarding this tenet can sound rather dramatic, to be sure. But the reality of the world we live in, regardless of where we're living, is that it can be a dangerous place. The key part of this tenet is remaining vigilant, not living in fear or seeing everyone as an enemy. Now, this definitely does not mean that we are to seek out trouble or try to insert ourselves into every potential situation that we may come across. Wisdom and discernment play a major role here, just like with the third tenet. Sometimes the force necessary to end a threat is none. And just as we are to not seek out conflict for ourselves, we are not to seek out conflicts between others so that we can intercede. There is a big difference between chasing someone down who just snatched a child off a playground and kicking in your neighbor's door because you hear them arguing. As Mandalorians, we must be prepared to step forward and act when others cannot or will not. Even going so far as to be willing to lose every drop of our blood in the process. No Mandalorian can stand by while violence is done against an innocent if it is within their power to stop it or allow time for further assistance to arrive or for the victim to escape. The refusal to act when you have the ability to make any difference is completely unacceptable. Such people who refuse to act when they have the ability are Hutun, cowards, which is the worst of all insults, even in the fictional Mandalorian culture. And as Dean Kuhn said, in self-defense and defense of the innocent, cowardice is the only sin. Beyond that, there are even those who would not only refuse to act themselves, but also actively prevent others from acting in defense of the innocents. We call these Darmanda Hutun, or cowards with no soul. A Mandalorian must be physically and mentally prepared to act if innocent people or property is at risk of violence. Now, we're all aware of the fight or flight fallacy. There are actually 4 F's under extremely stressful situations: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Some others even add a 5th one, faint, and even others have more. But these are mostly biological reactions to the adrenaline hormone and not what this tenet means. Additionally, especially if it's your very first experience, you will have very little or even no control whatsoever over your immediate physical reactions. This is not what this tenet is about. Now, you may not have any control over your biological reactions, but you do have control over how you act after the initial shock. Training most definitely plays a part here, but the will to act means more.
The will is everything! The will to act.
We as Mandalorians have to make the choice to act, and to not do so is unacceptable. Now, regarding property, this might need some further clarification. We addressed in the last video that wanton destruction of property is considered violence within our religion, but when we're talking about using force in order to protect property, we're not talking about anything so extreme as shooting someone stealing a candy bar or tagging a wall with spray paint. What is meant by this goes back again to the 3rd tenet. Using appropriate force against someone stealing a purse or breaking into your house or engaged in a riot is a completely different matter. Again, this should be obvious, but apparently it needed to be said. As previously stated, cowardice is one of the greatest sins within our religion. But with that in mind, remember that things like tactical retreats, calls for reinforcements, or acting to help other people escape harm are not to be considered acts of cowardice. But in the event that an innocent could be harmed by a Mandalorian's failure to act, the Mandalorian must act. However, this does not mean a Mandalorian must rush headlong into any conflict, nor should a Mandalorian even be seeking out conflict. Losing every drop of their blood. Now, being willing to lose every drop of their blood means exactly that. We as Mandalorians must be willing to lay down our lives and fight down to our last bit of strength, down to our final breath, to stand between the innocent and those who would do them harm. When your life, or the life of an innocent, is in danger, even if the odds are impossible, Even if defeat is inevitable and the battle considered hopeless, a Mandalorian fights on anyway. Never draw a line in the sand where a simple gust of wind can destroy it. Carve it with your sweat and your blood into the hardest stone and defend it with all that you are. And with that, we close out this brief overview on the fourth tenet of the Way of the Mandalore: defend those who cannot defend themselves. We do hope that you learned a little bit more about us and our religious beliefs. In our next video, we will be covering the fifth tenet: weapons and armor are holy, and it should add some more information regarding the spirits of weapons and armor and how we are to interact with them and what it means in a Mandalorian's daily life. More information on us can be found on our Facebook page by searching for, quote, The Way of the Mandalore, the Mandalorian Religious Movement. We are also mirrored on Instagram, and we have a movie page and a limited Twitter presence. Links will be in the description. Please give us a like and a follow if you're interested in learning more about us and our faith. And please consider donating to our Patreon if you are so inclined, as it does help us continue to produce these multimedia messages and spread the way to those who are willing to hear it. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section here, and we'll do our best to answer them in future videos or social media posts. Until next time, Vorentje Manduade, Balkoyer Muyutik, Ibik Runi. Thank you, brothers and sisters, and be safe. This is the way.